Shortly after my sister and I began drinking our Jack and Cokes from our small styrofoam cups, the nurse entered the room. Checking on Daddy, asking if we needed anything. We answered that no thank you, we were fine. And all three of us pretended that she couldn't smell the bourbon floating around the room. Then she quietly left. But just before Christmas, and Daddy was at the end of his struggle with stage 4 lung cancer, my sister was uneasy about having the presumed contraband in our possession. Presumed, because I never actually saw a sign prohibiting alcoholic beverages at the hospice. But I assured her that the nurses had better things to do than worry about our nightcap, as long as we didn't get rowdy. She continued to worry, though, expressing concern that we'd be the first people ever to be kicked out of hospice. Again, I reassured her that we were probably not the first people to have a calming nip while holding bedside vigil, and that even if we were, there was no reason for anyone to have us summarily booted from hospice. I mean, this was the South, after all. And being Southern, I am drawn, for reasons both culture and palate-driven, to the warm, loving, liquid embrace of sour mash. Specifically, Jack Daniels. My friend Scott prefers Drambuie. But then he also uses words like milieu and pedagogy. So go figure. While he distributes his bon mots as though they were alms for the vocabulary poor, I prefer the simple things in life, both in my lexicon and my libations. I love the tart burn that cuts saucily through the Coke and slides confidently down my throat, warming me from the inside out. The taste of Tennessee bourbon is one of rebellion, of sass. It's a heady mixture of crass redneck, backroom, poker games, and secretive boozy Southern belles, with a soupçon of old school white trash. My daddy, like Jack Daniels, was full of both rebellion and sass. As a rumsy but spirited kid, he once got revenge on a bully who repeatedly stole his lunch by carefully preparing a dog poop sandwich, then frosting the edges with peanut butter. Predictably, the bully stole his lunch, bit into the sandwich, and beat my daddy to a pulp. He did not, however, take Daddy's lunch again. True to form, Daddy was an oddball, even in that last week. Imagine my horror when his nurse, a smiling, middle-aged black woman, was greeted with, "Hello, brown sugar." Mortified, I quickly told her that I was sorry. My face starting to heat up. I left the room in shame. 20 minutes later, when I returned, the nurse was giggling like a schoolgirl, telling me, "I wish it was my daddy." I think I mumbled something to the effect that she could have him. During that last week, he also invented a game he called Eat My Shorts. The rules of which I won't go into, but it did entail flinging crumbs from his sweatpants, and, well, never mind. Daddy was a content Southerner. He even had a ball cap that said, "American by birth, Southern by the grace of God." He was the kind of man who would hit you in the eye with a snowball and then tell you Democrats don't cry. The kind of man that women fell in love with, even after he was fat and bald and broke. The kind of man who would cheat on your mama then slap his date when she badmouthed your mama. The kind of man who would pass gas in public and blame it on you. And then came cancer. When it finally became clear that Daddy's organs were failing and there was no real hope, my sisters and I made the choice to have him moved to hospice. I, along with one of my sisters, stayed with him there. In preparation for our stay, we went to his house and packed up some necessities: clean underwear, toothbrushes, and a t-shirt apiece. Before we left to return to the hospice, my sister grabbed the box of ding-dongs that Daddy had in the cabinet, and I grabbed the Jack Daniels. As I said, necessities. As night fell, my sister and I were in our respective hybrid chair beds, talking about everything from our childhood to funeral arrangements and paying Daddy's bills. Before long, feeling sorry for myself, for both of us, I padded down the quiet hall to the nourishment room, retrieved a Coke from the refrigerator full of canned sodas, school-sized 2.5% milk, Jell-O pudding cups, padded back to the room, and pulled out the JD. With a hushed reverence that is appropriate on such occasions, I mixed 2 drinks in small styrofoam cups and produced 2 ding-dongs from our bag of provisions. So we sat in our pajama pants, each wearing one of Daddy's sweatshirts, drinking and talking into the night, both utterly exhausted, but afraid to go to sleep. Afraid that Daddy would go and we would not know it. Afraid that we would awake to find him gone. Afraid of what it would mean to no longer have a day, even one like ours. So we talked, and we laughed, and we cried, and we finally turned out the lights, and we just kept talking.